Good morning and good afternoon to you once again, Sanjay ji. Here we are with episode number 8 of the Indus Blueprint. How are you doing?
Good morning, good afternoon to you and to all our viewers, Chandan. Yeah, it's a bright, sunny afternoon in midst of a monsoon season in Mumbai. But next weekend is again going to be wet. So I think we're enjoying the sun in between the monsoon break. So perfect day to have our conversations with so much happening.
The sun is shining on India. Truly, the sun is shining on India. I hope you could send some sunshine to us here in Warsaw. It's been cloudy and gloomy and 15 degrees. It looks like winter has arrived over here. But as long as the sun keeps shining on our Indus route, it's all positive. Well, where do we start this time? I think the best place to start is with our name, is with our wonderful Indus route that's taking shape. And we had some great news coming out of the Indo-Pacific this week.
Absolutely. I think that you've just chosen just the right part. Last weekend, we talked of Japan PM Takaichi visiting and building one part of the Indus route. A couple of weeks before, there was a lot of build-up happening from the western part of the Indus route. And this time, I think PM Modi covered three countries to taking it to the extreme eastern part of the Indus route. So he had a very successful tour across Indonesia, Australia, and New Zealand. And I think one of the things which we have seen, an overarching thing, is every visit is actually followed by a very quick list of outcomes. So it's no longer just a diplomatic meet. It is actually a combination of geopolitics, economics, and business. And that ensures that there's a continuous follow-up and drive, and that's what we saw. We saw in Indonesia, we saw defense, critical minerals, BrahMos, Astra coming in. We then of he was there in Australia, and I think between Australia and New Zealand, I think one thing we have always been speaking is 2x is the new X. So both the
Correct.
countries decided first thing the bilateral trade has to be double in the next 5 years. And then Australia, great tie-up for both critical minerals, uranium. We have been speaking about nuclear power growing from 8.8 to 100 gigawatts, and this is a great supply, long-term supply material, and it also benefits Australia because, in fact, you would
Right.
have seen on my post a lot of Australian. Uranium companies came back and said, in a way, it is good that this will force the Australian government and companies to actually invest more in the mines because now you have a ready customer. I think the
Right.
reverse of what Make in India is happening, that happened. And then he reached in New Zealand. And I think, again, we covered the complete plethora, right from naval security to talent mobility to more. So I think this is as perfect arc as we can see of the Indus route taking place.
Yeah, and if you read our subtitles in our captions in our little podcast, you will see that this is actually an ancient route. That this is not something that has taken place overnight. Indonesia and India have had enormous ties as with from ancient times, whether it be cultural, religious, spirituality, and lots of trade. Of course, Australia and New Zealand are relatively in the new world. They are relatively newer countries, but you have to also understand that these relationships, which have been cultivated with Australia and New Zealand, haven't occurred overnight. I love the famous scene in which you can see Modi ji, our prime minister, actually show a shawl, a woolen shawl that
A
he
25-year-old shawl.
that he first got in his visit when he went to New Zealand first. And wool is an extremely good export from New Zealand. Butter is a great export from New Zealand, and these are all products which have been traded in the past. The relationship has been cultivated, and now you can see that. like we always say, it's time to 10x that relationship.
Uh,
And like you said, the set of outcomes is not coming from one side pushing it on to the other side. It's both sides saying we have to get this done. And yes, it is the old ancient Indus route being revived all over again.
Absolutely. That's a you made some great points, and the fact that Indonesia is also giving access to the Sabang port. So we'll have one end of the Malacca Strait, and the other end we'll have the Andaman Nicobar Island. So so the seafaring route started from the thousands of years by Rajendra Chola is now again coming back. And same thing, you talked of culture. India is also going to sponsor the renovation of the world famous Prabhavan temple.
Right.
Yeah, and more than 57% of the New Zealand goods are now going to be under the free trade agreement at nearly zero tariff. So I think the elements are there which ensure that the business flows in, and I think that's where the flywheel comes in.
Yeah, and like you said, the elements for growth of business is there, and then you're automatically you're investing so heavily in infrastructure, and all of this is of course creating a lot of growth.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can, and the data is there, right? So we can come to our next point, which is the data. Last week we saw some excellent data, and the fact that that's the data which is as of end of 2025. So I'm sure this year the numbers will be even excellent. So UNC-TAD issued the latest numbers, and there was we saw 44% spike in FDI. We saw $39 billion coming in 2025, India moving to number 11. And since we always talk of the Indus route, so there was a big connection from the EU side. Means I was really surprised, not surprised, but very pleasant to know that 35% of the EU manufacturing FDI has actually come into India, which is the single largest hub. So all of that is actually coming in. And if you see right from AI infra to manufacturing to high-end technology, so all of this comes in. And the other big thing of the growth which is that it's not only everything coming in, I think the Indian companies are also becoming extremely ambitious. So we also
Yes.
saw more than 36 billion of outward FDI, which for the first time placed India in the top 20 in the FDI investing. So that's how I think the route is really, it's not just the building of the route, but I think now it's a highway with two-way traffic building up.
Yeah, and this is very important to focus on because a lot of times in the past, everybody has felt, at least the international community has felt, that India is always constantly asking for investments. India is always constantly asking for development funds. But it's not actually true right now. Right now, we are seeing a two-way relationship where companies and enterprises are investing in exactly those locations which will help them capitalize on opportunities. So if there needs to be a certain type of manufacturing that can be done in India, European companies and European and sovereign funds are pushing for that investment to be done in India. And at the same time, Indian companies, the Indian government as well, is extending direct investment into European markets or in Indo-Pacific markets, such that the opportunity can be maximized. It's no longer a selfish relationship or no longer a relationship that used to be
It's
judged
not
as
a
being
one-way
selfish.
flow,
It's
it's
not,
a
it's not a one.
bilateral flow.
Yeah,
I
it's
think last podcast we had talked of that even right from Morocco and Chile to Moscow, there is a hunt for critical minerals, critical resources, tie-up,
correct.
and all of that is coming in. And we saw that because of this growth happening in India, you are seeing more sovereign wealth funds coming in. So at one end, we already saw, in fact, very interesting data that in the last 6 months, I think more than 3x of the earlier investments of the Middle East sovereign wealth funds has actually come in just the first 6 months. And I think that again is an endorsement that post the West Asia crisis or the Hormuz people are knowing which are the continuing growth factors. And that's where I think building from there, same thing. We are seeing also a demand coming in from a EU sovereign wealth fund, because they are some of the biggest ones, and they always look for big opportunities. And I think one heartening thing is, if they look for big opportunities, then you have to stop talking at billions. We go to trillions.
We go to
Yeah.
trillions.
So one of the reports which came last week was, over the next decade or so, India will need almost to invest almost $22.5 trillion in infrastructure and green energy
Yeah.
to stay net zero. And that initial estimate show close to about 6.57 trillion dollar is a current funding gap. And that's where I think there'll be a big opportunity because of the changed rules of EU sovereign wealth funds to come in. So
Yeah. And
how that news being seen in EU? Would love to know that.
firstly, it's been seen as very positive because the European mindset it has changed, whereby they look at India not as a the previously India was thought of as a pollutant, that there is pollution in India, there is lack of environmental concern in India. But slowly in the past 3 or 4 years, the mindset has completely changed, where they have realized that without India there is no net zero, that
Yes.
the path to get to sustainability is through India. And they've also realized that of all the countries in the world, India wants to get to net zero. India wants to
Yeah.
have electrification of their vehicles, electrification of train transport, if possible, electrification of air transport. So the the way it's being viewed at right now is, in order to get to the goals of net zero and sustainability, a, the path is through India, and that's the way a, the goal is actually going to be achieved. You don't see anymore this mindset that we have to tell India what to do, but more, let's just figure out how to do it with India, and look at, in fact, how are they doing it. We had great solar news coming out of India. We have this is great combined solar and wind farm in Gujarat,
Yes.
and as well as in Rajasthan. And
Rajasthan.
the Europeans look at it, and especially the EU looks at it and say, as wow, this is a great example of what in fact we can build inside the EU.
Absolutely. Or similarly, like now Germany is looking at how to really again start scaling nuclear. And one of the discussions which is happening with with German as well as with the CDF, the French company, is how
Right.
to collaborate for the nuclear energy. So they're seeing uh, this. There is a tremendous opportunity, and we partner together, and we build together, and we benefit together. So it's not like a one-way thing. I think that is where learning from all these businesses flow, is where I think also we heard the EU bureau staff being ready to take the EU FTA to the next level. So this time, now we are not talking of months, we're talking of days. So now the scrubbing, I heard news that they want to do a very fast scrubbing.
Yeah, the idea is that they just want to get through whatever legislation needs to be done, whatever reviews that need to be done, the final checks and balances that need to be put in place. And from what I can see so far, from what is being covered in the local news so far, is that the legislation which required to be done is already done, and there are a few little glitches here and there, but uh, the majority of the concrete core of what needs to be put in place is already in place. And it's actually surprising, because sometimes, coming back to net zero and sustainability, from the European side, they're quite surprised to say, wow, India actually has a greater set of rules to get this done, and to implement this, and to march forward towards sustainability than what is in the EU. So they say, okay, so you can adhere to our set of rules when it comes to imports and exports, but actually your set of rules when it comes to import and export is even more or developed than what we are trying to implement.
Absolutely. In fact, India was one of the first which has launched. Anyone can go and see. It's a public info on Niti Aayog's website. They have a real-time dashboard of all the SDG 2030 goals, all the 14 goals. So you can literally
Yeah,
track as of this minute what was the target and where we are. So that's, I think, that transparency in a way has also ensure that the companies as well as the stakeholders are sticking to it, and then it builds the credibility as you talked of. And I think while the
yeah.
scrubbing, I think Mr. Goyal declared that scrubbing may happen in 15, 20 days. One of the things I'm also hearing from some of the clients coming in, would love to know your views. In the meanwhile, I'm hearing that a lot of EU companies, if they want to go, on a case by case, the deal flow is anyway happening and all the approvals are coming in. Is that how it's
Yeah.
working?
Yeah, it's working on both sides. When the Indian companies are coming in and approaching the Chamber of Commerce in the local countries over here, or they're approaching in the ministries that they need certain approvals for imports, or they need certain approvals for bringing in equipment or exporting equipment from here. The approvals are being granted on the basis that they know that this is going to be the case in the next 4 months. So why are we delaying it?
We're waiting for
And
it. Yeah.
why are we waiting for it? Because yes, you have to understand that the EU is a set of 27 countries, plus as you have Switzerland and you have some other special relationships that also need to be maintained around that. At So it's not that whether it is 15 days or 20 days or 2 weeks, the approvals don't have to wait for everything to be in place.
Place.
Because there is such a high level of transparency in India, which is
Right.
astonishing. It is really astonishing to see this. People inside India don't realize is the kind of transparency that India actually has when it comes to paperwork, when it comes to reporting, in that because that there is this transparency, like you said, the EU side says, okay, everything is in place as per our rules. Why are we waiting for the main FTA to come in place? Let's get the approvals done, even at a stage of whether it is at mergers or acquisitions. Without taking any, we had a software company that acquired another software company in Germany, and
Yep.
it was not thought of as an acquisition. It was thought of more as a merger. It was thought of more
Yes.
as a collaboration. And this is how it has always been, even before the talk of the FTA. When you look at the UK and with Tata, it is
Yes.
Jaguar Land Rover has been a legacy British brand. It will
Yes.
always it will always be a legacy British brand. It is just under Indian, I don't want to use the word ownership anymore. It is just under Indian stewardship. And
Yes.
stewardship doesn't mean in that you change the legacy of the brand. It means that you guide it into the future. And Indian companies understand the stewardship quite well.
Absolutely. So, in fact, way back when I was in Tata, that this was one of the signature landmark acquisitions happened, and at that time, everyone had so many doubts. But as you said, you take this as a seed and you really build on it. And in fact, just this week, I think Chairman Mr. N. Chandra, he announced a super ambitious plan saying $100 billion for Tata Motors, only Tata Motors passenger cars and other parts by 100 billion by 2031. And one of the key things he highlighted is that a significant part of the investment, which is almost 31 billion, will be in using JLR as a platform. And he thinks that by the time the group reaches that number, close to possibly 40 to 50 billion dollars of that revenue is expected from JLR. So he's looking at it as you said, JLR is now a platform. It's not an entity, right? So you have a
Right.
platform, You take their the best in class components, take their engineering, come up with electrification, come with other parts, look at new product market fits, and really explode. So that's a it's a great, fantastic way that it is almost woven into the DNA. It's no longer a SBU or a subsidiary or a majority, as you talked of.
You make it as a supply chain. You make it as a very robust part of your supply chain. You are solidifying this supply chain in not through one way investment and into the UK, but the other way around too now, because you have the UK FTA and a continuation of our wonderful Indus route.
Absolutely, yeah. And as you talked of, since it's Indus route, I think maybe he's also looking at our in the podcast because he gave a very clear direction that 10x is the new X. So in his
10x is
mind,
the
the
new.
number of passenger vehicles have to be 10x with all the different configurations. So
You know,
that's a great thing.
it's so good to see this founder mindset. It's coming in into all the huge conglomerates into India. It's this founder mindset where, uh, yes, you've had so many decades of success. You're sitting on huge piles of cash, and you are very liquid. It, you've had that success, but you're not just resting on your old laurels. That's very important. We saw this is at Mahindra as well. We saw this at Tata as well this week. We saw this is at Zoho as well. Well, it's really refreshing to see that this founder mindset is now
Yeah.
being carried into conglomerates as well.
And I hope some of our IT conglomerates are hearing it loud and clear what is required, because that's one of the criticisms which always comes up, right? That they're not moving up the value chain and doing that. And in fact,
True.
talking about the founder mindset, that's how I think it brings in a very different entrepreneurial energy. And one of the other
Right.
examples which last week came out was the Tata Electronics and their mobile and electronics numbers. And it was fascinating that what Foxconn took 20 years to build in Tata Electronics, they acquired some of the pieces of Winstron and Pegatron, integrated it back, and for last FI they've done $26.3 billion mobile exports, beating Foxconn. So you have someone who's actually been the virtually the founder of this mobile manufacturing and electronic supply chain. And what it does in 20 years, you do it in 3 years. So it obviously it's a different mindset. And this is where I think they also have to become opportunistic, because moment I think Foxconn started trying to focus more on AI servers and other parts
Correct.
of the value chain. Tata, in addition to mobile, and it's also investing into fabs and semiconductors.
Correct,
So,
sir.
so over a period of time, actually, it will build a very different supply chain and a much bigger supply chain, which will actually center India into the global supply chain. So I think that is uh, beating 3 years versus 20 is great. But what is really fantastic is the complete ecosystem coming together.
You know, when I have a big smile on my face right now, because when I actually graduated in supply chain management and marketing all those years ago, and did my master's in supply chain management and marketing all those years ago, supply chains used to be the most boring topic on the face of this planet.
Whoever didn't want to do anything, they will put supply chain on the back end. No one knew
Supply, no one
where
knew.
the supply chain head was sitting in the basement.
And now you cannot have a single conversation in any meeting in any organization without talking about how are we going to manage the supply chain. And it is the most favorite topic to look at on the news. It's the most favorite topic to look at on any kind of business forum. But it is this supply chain that you talked about that is being created with semiconductors, with defense, with energy, that is very impressive to see, because you have this diversification and de-risking at the same time. So maybe you could elaborate more on that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a great pivot. So, if you look at it, for example, last week we saw the announcement of CG Semi plant being formally going into production with inauguration by PM Modi. And while that's again just a starting point, but look at the
Right.
scale. Their day one scale is 200 million chips per year, but they in
Wow.
within 3 to 5 years they
Just
plan to
wow.
go to 5 billion chips, and they already
Wow.
have tie-up with Renesas uh, and as well as another customer. So it's not like they are doing a speculative build. There's already a demand which is coming in, and again
Right.
using that, how do you really build a ecosystem? So I think very quickly Gujarat is moving on. They've come up with a dedicated policies for component manufacturers. They are ensuring at least 25 various supply chain guys, and these are actually, as we say, is good to build a fab and the big OSATs, because they command numbers, and over 1.44 lakh crore of investment is going to come. But what is really important is, are you really going down to the bottom and building the infrastructure right from the gold plated wires to the highly specialized gases and all? And almost 25 companies from Korea, Japan, uh, and even Taiwan, they are coming. They've already been allocated land. So I think the plan is, everyone says it takes a decade to be a overnight success, but I think semicon ecosystem no one is building. No one is waiting. They are saying in the next 3 years we want to be the India's semiconductor valley, competing with the best in class, with the Taiwan, with the Koreas and the others. So I think the fact that they've done the first proof of concept and quickly moving to that, that goes back to your point of ecosystem building.
Yeah, no, ecosystem building, and as well as solidifying the supply chain to make sure that there is no risk
There's no
in the
long-term risk.
supply
There's
chain. To
continuity.
have yeah, yeah, to have a to have a successful Indus route, to have this abundance all the way from the southern Indo-Pacific all the way into the Mediterranean, the Baltic, and into the Atlantic. We need to make sure that this supply chain is extremely robust. That what are the materials required, when they are required, are available to whoever they are required by. It's not just creating an ecosystem for one country, but it's creating an ecosystem around the globe so
Absolutely.
that everybody everywhere can benefit. And this is the one important thing about the India growth story, that it is fueling growth across the globe. This is no longer just as one country absorbing the growth. It is one country fueling global growth.
Absolutely, well said. And I think one of the other aspects of building that ecosystem and fueling that growth is true economic power is when you also have hard power, right? Soft
Correct.
power is good, but hard power in today's, I think, geopolitical world, hard power is what we really count. And I think
Yeah.
just in last week, we have been seeing a huge focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat and in defense. But we saw literally three big announcements which covered land, air, and navy. So you had over 52,000 crore worth of enhanced capability gap being procured by all the tri forces. And I think the fundamental mindset is again changing, that you don't know where the tomorrow's risk or where the tomorrow's attack will come. So you no
Right.
longer can have a defense. I think now offense is the best defense. So they are going for
Correct.
active kills, drones, controlling the navy, all of that. And they also promised a long-term visibility for a lot of contracts by actually committing a 75,000 crore investment. And that is ensuring that the investment happens, because then companies can plan for their production line. As you talked of, companies can ensure that they have a long-term superior supply contracts available at a cheaper
Correct.
cost, at a better efficiency. have
Correct.
a tie-up, whatever are the missing pieces, have the tie-up with it. And just, I think, just yesterday, we saw beautiful INS Mahendragiri getting launched. It was the sixth frigate as part of the Project 17A. And the fact that over 75% of that is already indigenous content is actually a great
Correct.
testament
Correct.
to, as you talked of, you build a supply chain, you start at one point, but final supply chain. So while Mazagon Dock is leading, but if 75% of the components are indigenous, a lot of
Correct.
MSMEs leading to employment generation, leading to their growth actually comes in.
And this is also being looked at very favorably from a European perspective, because yes, there is a lot of defense tie-ups and there's a lot of defense collaboration. But then on the other hand, you saw Maersk so boldly
Yes.
invest into Indian shipbuilding and say, hey, that literally without
And the
saying the words
cargo,
in
yeah, and the cargo boxes,
and the
containers.
cargo containers as well. So, oh, and a lot of German companies as well building ships in India. So you have the hard defense force being shown, the investments into defense, and that is fueling again the commercial side of things as well. So it's really good to see that. Yes, you rightly said that offense is the new
There's a new
defense, but
defense.
uh, is the new defense, correct? And but that same offense, that same mindset is being said. Okay, if this can be done for the defense industry as well, it can be done for the commercial side of things at the same
Absolutely.
time, and you see multi-use across, you see multi-purpose use across the board.
Absolutely. That's something I
So
think
we
both
had
of us can go on and on. But I think maybe some of it, in fact, is happening very actively even as of today. So I think we should have some teaser and some reasons for our viewers to come back.
we should definitely do that. I think this is a great place to end our episode for this time, unless you have something else to add.
No, I think is a great. I think all the as one of the sayings of action movie, the A Team. Liam Neeson says, "I love it when the plan comes together." So I think this is one of those moments.
This is definitely one of those moments. The plan has come together. There is great collaboration across the oceans, across the seas, and
Across
it
the
is good
both
to see
sides of
so
the
many
Indus
players.
route.
It's good to see so many players collaborating and understanding that this is all about creating mutual growth and mutual abundance for everybody. So once again, it was great to speak to you, sir, and we look forward to doing this again next week.
Absolutely, always a pleasure to connect and keep building the Indus route for the Indus podcast and beyond. So thanks so much once again. See you soon
And
next
we
weekend.
see you soon, sir. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.